Sunday, September 29, the wedding at Cana. Read John chapter 2, verses 1 to 11. What sign did Jesus do at Cana, and how did this help his disciples in coming to believe in him? Let's read that in John chapter 2, beginning at verse 1. On the third day, a wedding took place at Cana in Galilee. Jesus' mother was there, and Jesus and his disciples had also been invited to the wedding. When the wine was gone, Jesus' mother said to him, "They have no more wine." "Woman, why do you involve me?" Jesus replied. "My hour has not yet come." His mother said to the servants, "Do whatever he tells you." Nearby stood 6 stone water jars, the kind used by the Jews for ceremonial washing, each holding from 20 to 30 gallons. Jesus said to the servants, "Fill the jars with water." So they filled them to the brim. Then he said to them, "Now draw some out and take it to the master of the banquet." They did so, and the master of the banquet tasted the water that had been turned into wine. He did not realize where it had come from, though the servants who had drawn the water knew. Then he called the bridegroom aside and said, "Everyone brings out the choice wine first, and then the cheaper wine after the guests have had too much to drink. But you have saved the best till now." What Jesus did here in Cana of Galilee was the first of the signs through which he revealed his glory, and his disciples believed in him. Seeing Jesus perform the miracle of changing the water into wine provided evidence in favour of the disciples' decision to follow Jesus. How could it not have been a powerful sign pointing to him as being someone from God? They probably were not yet ready to understand that he was God. Moses was the leader of the Israelites, and he brought Israel out of Egypt by many signs and wonders. As we read in Deuteronomy chapter 6 and verse 22, "Before our eyes the Lord sent signs and wonders, great and terrible, on Egypt and Pharaoh and his whole household." And Deuteronomy 26 verse 28, "So the Lord brought us out of Egypt with a mighty hand and an outstretched arm, with great terror and with signs and wonders." He was the one whom God used to free Israel from the Egyptians. He was, in a sense, their saviour. God prophesied through Moses that a prophet would come who was like Moses. God asked Israel to hear him, as we read in Deuteronomy 18, verse 15, "The Lord your God will raise up for you a prophet like me from among you, from your fellow Israelites. You must listen to him." And Matthew 17, verse 5, "While he was still speaking, a bright cloud covered them, and a voice from the cloud said, 'This is my Son, whom I love. With him I am well pleased. Listen to him.'" And Acts 7, verse 37, "This is the Moses who told the Israelites, 'God will raise up for you a prophet like me from your own people.'" That prophet was Jesus, and in John chapter 2, Jesus performed this first sign, which itself pointed back to the deliverance of the children of Israel from Egypt. The river Nile was a key resource and a deity for the Egyptians. One of the plagues was directed at the river, the changing of its waters to blood. At Cana, Jesus performed a similar miracle, but instead of turning water into blood, he turned it into wine. The water came from 6 water pots used for purification purposes in Jewish rituals, linking the miracle even more closely to biblical themes of salvation. By recounting the incident of changing the water to wine, and thus referring back to Exodus, John was pointing to Jesus as our deliverer. What did the master of the feast think of the unfermented wine that Jesus provided? He was indeed surprised by the quality of the drink, and, not knowing the miracle that Jesus had performed there, thought that they had saved the best for last. The Greek word oinos, O-I-N-O-S, is used both for fresh and fermented grape juice, as we read in the Seventh-day Adventist Bible Dictionary on page 1177. Ellen G. White states that the juice produced by the miracle was not alcoholic, and that's in the chapter At the Marriage Feast, The Desire of Ages, page 149. No doubt those who knew what happened were astonished at what had taken place. And so to finish the day, what are your reasons for following Jesus? We have been given many, haven't we? This lesson was read by Dr. Percy Harrold for Christian Services for the Blind. Sponsored by the Sabbath School Department and distributed through Hope Channel Australia, this podcast is also redistributed by Hope Channel Germany, Christian Record Services for the Blind. It is also available on SoundCloud and through multiple podcast distributors, including Apple iTunes. And you can listen and watch at the same time on YouTube. Remember, God is always faithful.